Hello, friends. Today we'll try to understand a beautiful novel, 1984, written by George Orwell. This novel was published in 1949 with an anticipation to seeing the world some years hence. George Orwell is a writer who is known for his pensive humor. He dispassionately looks at the world and without an attempt to glorifying it, he sees the world in shambles after witnessing the two world wars. So, without speaking any further, theoretically, I would like to bring to your mind and for a witness the picture that could speak volumes for what the world would be as George Orwell could foresee in 1949. And this is the picture. You can see a hand holding several people as puppets. Everyone is in control of this iron hand. It is believed and has stood a belief since time immemorial that with his free will to act and to translate these acts, he has the freely moving appendages. Man must enjoy his first and foremost natural right to freedom. And here we see that multitudes are being controlled by this hand. The strings of all these men or people are in direct control of this hand. Is this the hand of a creator? Does creator hold us in this way? No. We are given a free will to think, to act, and therefore it shouldn't be one. And as I told you, this is a novel written, published in 1949, and definitely after having witnessed the aftermaths of war, the two world wars, this shouldn't be the doing of God. This hand with the nails protruding out and with a zeal to hold everyone in control, in a monstrous control, is the state of affairs. So, this is no state of bliss. This is a state of a complete control. And we see that there are leaves of some journal or some book which all these people are holding in their hands, and each one seem to be absorbed in what stands before them. They are oblivious of the control that holds them from the top, and they are made to look into those papers which certainly should be the doing of this hand. There is a circulation of a wisdom which the author, the one who holds them, has prescribed, and they do not dare to even budge from what has been presented to them. We see their eyes riveted upon the papers, the folded papers, that stand before them. This actually is the image of a chilling dystopia. What is dystopia? The dystopia is a state of governance, a state of existence in which happiness is denied, liberty is denied, a free will is denied, and everything that is human is not allowed. Perforce, it is denied. I think this image could have induced into us what the world that was described and narrated in the novel 1984 and written in 1949, published in 1949, was actually the image of 35 years hence. 45 years hence. Let's see what this should be holding and what should this state of existence be called. The state of existence is a totalitarian state. Now, what is a totalitarian state? As described by Hannah Arendt, the ideal subject of totalitarian rule is not the convinced Nazi or the dedicated communist, but people for whom the distinction between fact and fiction, true and false, no longer exists. So it is not to talk about the Nazi, the totalitarian rule exercised in Germany by Hitler, nor is it the totalitarian rule exercised in Russia by Stalin. This is about the people in general. A rule could be governing you from outside, but if you are made to have a mindset, if you are made to become a people for whom the simple thought process would be abrupted, the simple exercise of will, exercise of rationale would be curbed, and you would be reduced, people would be reduced to a state where they will not be able to distinguish between fact and fiction. I think if you talk to a child that if you do this wrong, God is going to punish you. So God for him is a fiction. He has not seen him. But even the child will retort, oh, I have not seen a God. Where is God? Is it Papa who will punish me? Or is it Mommy? No. So this, even the discrimination, the preliminary discrimination between fact and fiction, which is the gift of nature even to a child, is restricted to people. And they cannot distinguish between true and false because their assimilation is suspended. It is perforce curbed and it exists no longer. So, now I'll talk to you about the novel 1984. Actually, the novel is about the three constantly warring states: Oceania, Eurasia and Eastasia. The novel 1984 is set in the warring state of Oceania. As the name suggests, it is an ocean full of waters, but then governed by the tectonic force that might send storms, and if it has to rest stable, only the undercurrent will hold it stable. A very symbolic name has been given to the state which is the center of the narrative of 1984. Oceania is governed by the all controlling party. The name of the party is all controlling party. The name is suggestive enough to give you an idea of what the world would be in 1984. And we, as living in 2020, can see very clearly from what we have evolved, from what state of affairs have we moved into modernity. Now, limiting our study to this Oceania, which is governed by the party called all controlling party, where everyone, as I told you, the definition given by Hanna says that the natives of this place are all, I repeat, all brainwashed. God has sent us all with a brain. The system of analysis, the system of making judgment, the system of assessing things as they are. So this system is completely cleansed of its basic faculty of analysis and even of thinking. So the population is completely brainwashed, and they have been so brainwashed that they have become not only unthinking, but they have become servile as well. Servility is the mark of the day for all the subjects. To be servile means to act as subjects to an order without utilizing a brain. And these subjects in 1984 are so servile as to take their orders from their leader, whose name is the Big Brother. The irony lies here in the name which this tyrant assumes. He is big. Big means above, larger in size, larger in the human dimension, to the extent that all humanity is lost from him. He is big, the big superior of the unthinking subjects. But to extend a sense of palatability or a sense of belongingness, farcically, he loves to call himself brother. So this Big Brother is governing the three constantly warring states. The servility has been imposed not only in their thinking process, but as I showed you the picture, that each was holding a paper before them, a pamphlet before them that should be reading something. So this pamphlet is called Newspeak. Newspeak. You can see the title speaking volumes of what should be served onto these subjects, onto these servile, unthinking subjects. It is Newspeak. So it's a very simple phenomena that if something is repeatedly told to you, a time comes when you start believing in what has been given to you. The biggest idea, the biggest principle of arresting the mind of the people is through circulation of thoughts. The Big Brother thinks for them and circulates his thoughts in his own specially chosen language, which is the new speak. He speaks new. He tells to you that you may not be, you may have been born a thinking being, but here I speak to you a new dictum, the new dictum which suggests that I will speak and you will act. And what is circulated to them? The circulation that is made upon these people are the party's slogans. Now, to arrest the mind of these people, to arrest even the acts of these people, they shout slogans. They are made to believe in the slogans which the big brother has devised and which he wants the people to think in them. And what are these slogans? These slogans, listen carefully. They are: war is peace. If we try to look at our ordinary understanding of the usage of the word is, the helping verb is, this generally is used to say that what is on the left of is the reality of, or is the expansion of the thing which is towards the right of is. And what do they write? War is peace. That means, as I told you, that these are constantly warring states and the war must be assimilated by the people as peace. So they'll keep shouting the slogans until your ears are stopped from the rationale to enter in, and you have to believe in the first slogan that war is peace. The second slogan that is advanced upon them is freedom is slavery. See the paradox that is implied into these slogans. Freedom is slavery. Do you, I ask you, as thinking beings, will agree to that? You cannot. But this is the dictum in a totalitarian state that came to exist when the two superpowers, Germany and Russia, were exercising their influence upon the world, and people had to have not their ears stopped, but their rationale stopped. And the third was ignorance is strength. As you saw in this image, this is the image. Something has been handed over to them, and everyone has to understand, as we give to the children of the preliminary classes, the KGs and the infant classes, some paper in which there is a figure made A, and they are made to believe that this A is an apple. It stands for an apple, and the child has to readily accept what you have given to them. So, ignorance, perforce, that awareness of the world, the awareness of what is going around them, has been stopped from entering into their existence. They are made to believe that ignorance is strength. Why? Because strength is needed as a support to the ruling system, the ruling power, which is the controlling party, all controlling party. So this controlling party needs to be strengthened by the absolutely dead and unthinking brains, to which not wisdom but ignorance will be imbued into them, so that they come to believe that ignorance is their strength, and they are strong only if they stay ignorant. To add a sense of subjugation further to its extreme in this totalitarian state, the big brother puts the governance upon his people through the gang of oppressors that is called thought police, where the big brother is not a brother if he is making his people to see falsity as something which is a truth which he has imposed. So what should his police be doing? His police is the thought police. What is police? The meaning of police is the power that exercises a control that is dictated by law and needs to be observed by the subjects in the state. This police is now curbing and controlling and holding in sway, complete sway, the thoughts of the people. They cannot think on their own. What worse state of servility could be analyzed other than this? So the big brother and the thought police, they are the images, they are the names given to a corrupt, to an absolutely tyrannical modern social and political setup. 1984 is about, it's a novel about the society that was brought about by the politics. See, we say that any state of government is a state of government made by its people. The people make the government, and that we see is, we may call it democracy or whatever state of affairs. It could be a president governed state, or it could be a prime minister governed state, but then they all come as a projection of the mind of the subjects. But in a totalitarian rule, the mind of the big brother united with the tyrant police make their subjects. How in this state of affairs there is a somebody like us who is by the name Winston, who wants to live, who wants to love, who wants to exist and who wants to think and also act for himself with someone who offers to be his partner sometime in life by the name Julia, and how a representative of state by the name O'Brien come and thwart their dreams such that these two anonymous, only two among the millions who have dared to raise their heads, if not heads, at least their thought, are crushed underfoot ruthlessly, mercilessly and criminally. So this is the subject matter of the novel, and which we shall continue in our next lecture. It's a big thank you for today. Thank you so much. Think it over, how you would feel the world would have existed in 1984, now that you are in 2020. How do you see your world in some way similar to that 1984 world? Is George Orwell a seer who could foresee the world even before it could come into existence? Or do you think we have moved away from this image of 1984 into a better image? Literature, if it can provoke you into thought, is literature. And you, if you can think for yourself independently, as Emerson had said in his beautiful essay, the American Scholar, he had said that a scholar is not the parrot of someone else's learning. A scholar is man thinking. If you can think for yourself, will you have understood what George Orwell, the seer, has presented for us? Thank you.